Thank you, Madam Halimah, for your time to be here with us today. I'm excited to kick off this fireside chat with someone who is a total legend, right? We are going to talk about breaking barriers, leading with a heart, and just being an all-round inspiration. Okay, so I'm sure our audiences are very excited as well. They have actually put in a lot of questions in the registration forms that they submitted. Okay, there have been questions about your early days, how you've been hustling since young. That's the word to use. Being your role as the nation's first female president, and they are also curious to find out more about the values you hold dear to and what sparks your passion for unity. Okay, so to start things off, I'm sure the audience would love to hear about your life journey. Your father passed away when you were 8 years old, leaving you and your 4 siblings to be brought up by your mother. You even helped your mom to sell nasi padang outside Singapore Polytechnic. Despite facing financial difficulties, you did well, became a lawyer, took on the role as the first female Speaker of Parliament, and then became the first female President of Singapore. So, can you share with us what and who motivated you to do well in your education and your career?
Well, first of all, let me thank Berita Harian and also Reach for organizing this dialogue and looking forward to having a very meaningful dialogue with all the participants here. I was given a list of questions and I looked at the questions and I thought I will be here until 12 a.m. I think you can just summarize it and because a lot of the questions overlap anyway. But well, you're quite right. My father died when I was 8 years old. And even before he died, our situation was quite difficult. But after he died, it became worse. And my mother became the sole breadwinner, having to take care of the 5 of us. I was the youngest of the 5 children. And it was a very difficult journey because, we really cherish our children now, right? If any of you have got children. Okay. So if any of you have children, Hello, you can hear? Okay. So how we cherish our children, how you worry, how did they get to school and all that. But I don't have all that opportunity because my mother was very busy earning a living to feed us. The first day to school, when I was only 6.5 years old, I was studying in school at Emerald Hill Road. She took me by my hand and we walked all the way for about 15 minutes from home at Seligi House to Bras Basah Road. And she said, well, this is where you should take the bus. Remember? So then she would go up the bus and then she dropped me at the school. And I said, aren't you coming to the school? No, she said, you go and find your own way. You see all the children walking up there with their parents. You walk up there. And then when you are going home, she said, don't forget to cross the road, take the bus on the other side. Otherwise, you will end up somewhere else. I said, you're not coming to fetch me back home? She said, no, I've already told you to walk from home to the bus stop. So, but I think those are very important lessons for me because it helps to develop resilience, you see. You understand, you look out for yourself. You understand that this world is not a wonderful place. It's got full of risks. You got to take care of yourself. You learn to develop yourself. So I think those are very good and important lessons. But frankly speaking, I will never put through my grandchildren through that. No way. So it's a completely different generation now. And I think that's the challenges that all of you also face in terms of how you should bring up your children. Whether you want to expose them to the risks, to the chances, to the challenges, and then they develop their own strength along the way, or whether you want to be rather somewhat more protective parent or grandparent or whatever. Yeah, but, but for me, those formative years are very important. We don't realize how much our childhood actually molds us, molds each and every one of us, not just me, molds all of you, And that is important, how childhood molds us. And, incidents in school also can be quite challenging because sometimes I go to school, that particular school that I go to, every Chinese New Year, the school day after Chinese New Year, we are allowed be allowed to wear home clothes. You can wear your home clothes because it's an extension of Chinese New Year celebration in the school. And then out of the whole school at assembly, I realized that I plus one other girl are the only ones wearing school uniform. Because you're supposed to come in your best clothes and your best shoes. But I don't have the best clothes and the best shoes. So I come in my uniform, it makes me feel a lot better, So I don't stick out by being not coming in clothes which are not so nice or shabby or whatever. But those are very, it helps me along the way, in terms of molding your character, your values, your principles. You never take anything for granted. Everything has to be earned. I used to save every penny when I go to school in order that at the end of the day, after a week or a month, I can buy additional stationery. I can buy that I need, because I don't have the heart to go to my mother and say, hey, can you please, I need this, my color pencil, or that I need writing paper, writing pad or whatever. So you learn the value of many things, But I think that helps me along the way too. As I go into the workforce, as I perform the different roles and tasks, even as a president, that helps me to understand. It helps to build a great deal of empathy for people to understand, No one can stand in the shoes of another person completely, 100%, not possible. But at least our own life journey helps us to build and develop the empathy for others. And that's very important for leaders, Leaders cannot only just have the vision. This is our vision. We want to bring you to here, from here to there. But in carrying out that vision, you must have the empathy. And so that helps me a great deal also in developing some of these values. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Madam Halimah, for your wonderful sharing on your personal experiences. I think what Madam Halimah have shared, right, is how from young, right, all these values have been inculcated in her from her upbringing, from her formative years. All right, let's keep it going and let's dive deeper into your journey and the awesome lessons you've picked up along the way. Throughout your career, we observe that you're not afraid to speak up for the less fortunate. For example, you spoke up about the home-based businesses during COVID, looking out for workers' interests, calling out for more to be done for caregivers, calling out for rapists above 50 to be not to be spared the cane, to better protect children from sexual predators. And this is just to name a few.
I hope that law will be changed soon.
See, she's still very passionate about it. Very good. Okay, so how do you build the courage and confidence to speak up?
You see, I tell you the story. I live in, when I was in my teenage years, I live in Sleepy House. You know Sleepy House, huh? Now it's a completely different. In the old days, it's different. But I live in Sleepy House. And the block that I lived with is, there's opposite is another block. And connecting the two blocks, there's a bridge to help people to move from one side to the other so that they can take basically the lifts. In those days, we don't have the lift upgrading programs where you have so many lifts in one block. There's only one lift in one block, and then you can just to deal with that, so people can move both ways. And one day, the management of the area at that time, not yet under town council, it was under HDB. The HDB decided to put these stone benches and tables at the bridge. Okay, then a few days later, a bunch of kids, hooligans are basically, they are teenagers also. They came every night. They will be there right until 2 to 3 a.m. and then they'll be drinking, they'll be gambling, they'll be laughing. And it was terrible. It was very noisy. It was really very noisy. So I waited for a few days. And the remarkable thing is nobody went up to them to tell them to stop it. I was only just a 15-year-old, and I was very skinny and scrawny at that time. I said, and all of them were boys, about 5 or 6 of them. I said, I can't take it anymore. So I went up to them and I said, to stop this because you're causing gross inconvenience to all the residents, especially those who are living near the bridge. And then they, instead of being apologizing, they became very abusive, which is worse. We had clothes, we hang along the corridor, we went to pour oil on the clothes, So they were very nasty. So what did I do? The next day, I called up the HDB. Can you please remove the stone benches and table? So the HDB officer, 1 second of silence, then he said that, do you know who requested for those stone benches and tables? I said, I don't know. It is Dr. Toh Chin Chai, the MP for the area. Oh, I said, I know that's a very important person, But so and then I said, well, I want to make a suggestion. Can you please ask Dr. Toh Chin Chai, I'm inviting him to come and stay in my house for 1 night. 1 night only. No longer than that. If you stay for 1 night only, then you'll understand my problem. And I could hear a chuckle at the end of the line, The HDB officer was chuckling away. Well, he said, okay, let me think about it. I'll get back to you. He didn't get back to me, but 2 days later, because in between the bridge, right, they have a gate. So at 10 p.m. promptly every day, the gates were closed. And that problem of noise and dirt. So I realized one very important thing. And when I went to work in the labor movement, it's the same thing. You do not speak up when there's oppression. That oppression affects me, but it also affects other families. But nobody's speaking up about it, So I wonder why. I began to realize that sometimes people don't like to confront difficult issues, difficult problems. They don't like confrontation, they avoid. But if you avoid, and that's a strategy you employ all the time, nothing gets resolved. And you got to live with that kind of oppressive situation. So that to me is important value. I was only like 15 years old at that time against great Dr. Toh Chin Chai, but I think it's okay. I don't know whether he knows about the incident or not. But the HDB officer at that time, I think, was quite, he found a solution that's satisfactory to everyone, Yeah, but that's the thing, you see. I find throughout my life, even when I went to the NTUC, the reason I joined NTUC is because I felt at that time, in 1978, when I joined NTUC, I was one of the first few, or rather the second few, English graduates joining the labor movement. Nobody wanted to join NTUC at that time because it pays very poorly. It doesn't have much of a prestige. Law graduates wants to go and join the banks, or they want to go to join the Aegis chambers, or they want to practice. But I feel a sense of affinity, so I joined. And, at that time, we do a lot of representation of the unions, of the workers, and it gives you a feeling that you are contributing towards a balancing of the power. Power is never equal because employers, they have access to a lot. They have access to lawyers, they have access to specialists, professionals, and so on to advise them, whether in collective bargaining and all that. But the workers don't have that. The unions don't have that. That was 1978. And remember, now, of course, NTUC is considered as a good employer. Everybody goes. But in those days, it was very different. But it's the same principle that, throughout life, if you can contribute in helping people, empowering them is basically a process of empowering. In the process, you empower yourself, you empower other people, and then people can take care of themselves, When I started in the labor movement, I tell you, the first meeting I had in 1978 was with 20 elderly trade unionists. There was I, the skinny, scrawny, newly minted officer joining the meeting, and they were all staring at me. Actually, a more experienced officer was supposed to go, but last minute he couldn't make it. He said, you go. So I was alone. It was just about a few weeks after I joined NTUC. And then they're all staring at me, wondering what kind of advice this girl wants to give to me, this woman wants to give to us. We are all very experienced. We are ground people, They know all their issues well. They know what to do. They just want a little bit of, maybe advice, support, check on the law and all that. So that was how I started. It was quite nerve-wracking, although they may not be highly educated, but they are very clever people. They've been working on the ground for many years. And so representing workers, articulating, in those days, you can call for industrial action also. You don't actually go on strike, but you can threaten to go on strike. So the situation was still very conflictual. Then, but gradually, you'll trust. Then I realized one important thing. People don't care people don't care whether you're a graduate or whatever, you got no degree, they don't care. The most important thing to them is whether you can help them or not, what value you can add. And gradually I find that when the unionist comes to NTUC, they come looking for me. I've got me and my boss. My boss is a male, was a male, he passed away, a really very good boss, passed away. My male boss in charge of the legal department, and very many more years of experience. But when they come, it was so gratifying for me. They always ask for me, and so some people say your place is like like a clinic, a GP clinic. People come and queue up to see you. Now so the journey was a long one. You build relations, you build trust, and the rest comes automatically. Yeah.
Right. Thank you for sharing that with us. You remind us, right, that making a difference often starts with a single courageous voice and the willingness to speak up. And I think that's very, very important, especially when you want to value add to people's life and you want to do good for the community. All right, let's move on to our next question. This one's about your early day and how your experiences shaped your leadership style. Could you tell about a pivotal moment in your early career that influenced the way you lead today, and maybe share some values that you hold dear throughout your career and your life?
Well, I as I said, I was fortunate. I started with the labor movement, and rule number one in the labor movement, you have to have a lot of engagement on the ground. Engagement is critical. People always think, well, NTUC, you tell them to, the workers, the unionists, you tell them do this, do that, they will do that. No. I remember we went through several series of changes to legislation, Trade Unions Act, the Industrial Relations Act, the Employment Act. And throughout all that, it doesn't mean that, you talk to the government, you talk to employers, and then you have a set of laws, and to the unions, okay, you take it. It doesn't work that way. You got to go down and talk to every union, and you got to explain to them why. And you got to get their feedback. And then you got to take into consideration the feedback. And then you got a duty then to also bring it back to the tripartite committee. I can't see what happens now because I left the labor movement in 2011. But I assume the process must be the same. But the most important thing is you need to engage the ground, because it's not automatic that you will get people to support your policies, your programs, which is very critical and important.
All right. Thank you. So engagement of the ground, knowing the people, and also, speaking to them to find out more about what they are, maybe what they feel challenged about is also very important, right? Okay. So now, Halimah, we want to delve into another aspect of your journey. This one is about you being a minority, so being a Muslim, a Malay woman who wears the tudung. You've undoubtedly faced unique challenges. We admire your strength and grace in overcoming these challenges. So could you share with us some of the challenges you face and how you overcome them? Additionally, how do you deal with public criticism, especially where it can be very intense and personal?
Well, criticisms will always be there, whether it's public, private. Those are the things you have to take in your stride, Of course, when I stood for election in 2017, it was a walkover, and when everybody said, well, that was designed for her. So, despite the fact that, although it was a reserve election, but the rules are the same. And President Tharman stood for election in 2023, the same rules that he applied to him applied to me. In that, you must, if you're a public sector candidate like myself, you need to come from either you were formerly a speaker or minister, or you were a permanent secretary. Private sector, you need to fulfill the criteria of 500 million. You have experience of running a $500 million company. The only difference was mine was a reserve election for a Malay candidate only. But that criteria applies in the 2017 election as well as the 2023 election. The two candidates who put in their names, together with me, did not qualify that 500 million, just like George Go did not qualify for the 2023 election when he stood against President Tharman. So I think that's important to understand. And the reserve election is not meant only for one race, for all the races. So if like 30 years down the road, there is no Chinese president, then it will be a reserve election for a Chinese president. So I think that's important to understand. Criticisms will be there, but my policy is always never to, focus on the negativities, but rather to continue to do your work. You've got certain goals to achieve, certain objectives. You just focus on that, and you can't go wrong. There's a lot of work to do. Like when I became as a president, basically there are various parts in your work. You have the constitutional work that you have to do, which is pertaining to the reserves. So there's a lot of work there. And then you've also got the ceremonial functions, appointing judges and so on and so forth. And then thirdly, you've got the third pillar, and that is community engagement. During my time, I did both the first two as required under the Constitution. And the third one I pay special care and attention to make sure that that's what we do, that I do in terms of engaging the community. And that's really important to me because I always feel that, the Istana and the president should not be someone very distant. In the past, somehow it has been given, that's the impression given, but that it should be something that people feel an institution that is part of the of Singapore and is accessible. So I did a lot of work opening up the grounds of the Istana, working with groups, So I think that has been most, for me, that has been very, very important. Yeah.
Thank you. So most importantly is to just focus on your goal, right? Doing the right things and not to focus on the negativity. Okay, so now let's shift gears a little bit. We would love to hear more about your vision for the future of Singapore. In today's fast-paced world, what are some advice you have for the young Singaporeans who will be leading our future generation? And how do you think they can contribute to make Singapore a more resilient and united place?
Well, first you've got to start awareness. It is very important. Sometimes worry. What's my worry? My worry because Singapore has been going on quite smoothly. We've weathered so many storms, economic crisis, the different financial crises, economic crises, the COVID-19 pandemic, Somehow we've done all those difficult, and also ensuring that we continue to grow, create jobs. And the fear is this, but remember, the world is not standing still. The world is moving time. And then as the world moves, opportunities created globally, other countries also aspire. Countries are not at a standstill. They also aspire. The people also want to have better lives. My concern is this, that if we do not focus on making sure that we continue to be exceptional. We're a very small country. You must remember that no matter what we say, sometimes we get a lot of, people praising us. I mean, a lot of world leaders, heads of states, and they always tell me that they are very amazed at Singapore, how we were able to recreate ourselves, achieve such a good standard of living. But all this is a work in progress, frankly. And also you cannot stand still. The minute you think that you've made it and therefore you can go easy, it's going to be a situation where, we will no longer be exceptional. And then we do not have the kind of resources that many countries have. That is my concern. Concern in Singapore is this, the social cohesion. And social cohesion is two question of inequality. So we have income and wealth inequality, and that is growing. We can say that it's because of global pressures, which is also true, global demands for skills and all that makes people with skills a lot more in demand, and therefore they can command higher pay. But whatever it is, people living in Singapore experience the pressures, then is really this growing inequality, and how we have to make sure that we address this issue of growing inequality. And of course, government of schemes, a lot of schemes available to help basically largely the bottom 20%. You have the workfare income supplement, for instance, for example, the social service organizations, allowances that they give and so on. But the ability to continue to make sure that people have the ability, competent skills to do good jobs, decent jobs which pay good wages is very critical. Part of cohesion is, of course, the pressures that we face because of these identity politics. And that is global. It's global. Identity politics is global. And people, when they feel threatened, they feel fearful, they turn into their own communities, into their own identities. You see that globally. The US, for instance, the ultra-white nationalists, that is a major concern for them because that is not inclusive, it is exclusive. And you see in other countries also fear, where politics is based on religion, is based on race. It's a very dangerous situation. And so I'm concerned at how that will affect us. We've done, I must say, pretty good so far, but it's a work in. This is something that not just the government or the different organizations, but is something that every individual has to be mindful of and see how they can contribute to it. And of course, my third concern is governance. You see, social media is so pervasive, right? TikTok and all that. I don't know. I don't use TikTok. I don't know how to be funny. You see, so but the problem with social media is this: social media depends a lot on, you're present all the time. So social media provides that platform for leaders present all the time, whether it is on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and what else. But in a sense, that also sometimes makes governance very difficult because of two things. One is sometimes the information that goes in these bite-sized messages, narratives, is not something that can be comprehensive or captures all the aspects of an issue. And that then encourages people to feel angry about something when actually it's not capturing everything. The second thing is, it may also sometimes be corrosive. It may corrode governance, once you, although see all the time, leaders, whichever group or leadership, but corrode also that sense of authority. That's what social media does. It corrodes the authority of governance. So you got to be careful. It's got to be a very good balance, between being present, but at the same time ensuring that does not result in corrosion of authority. So, you can continue to govern well. Yeah. So that's also a concern for me. And of course, as I said, we must continue to make sure we continue to emphasize on innovation, skills building. Those are the normal things that we normally emphasize. Yeah.
Thank you. So basically, right, the challenges of the future would be that we need to continue to be excellent, right? Singapore's a tiny country and we need to continue to be excellent. And at the same time, social cohesion is very important. And as well as the fact that we all need to continue to be adaptable and to drive positive change. All right, so now we've come to our Q&A segment. So how this will go is that if you have a question for Madam Halimah or even a comment about what she's already shared with us, you can raise up your hand and then one of my colleagues will go to you with the microphone. So can we start with the first question?
Can you hold for me, please? Hello, Madam Halimah. This is Alistair here. Thank you so much for sharing. I think the question I have is that as we continue to be the voice and stand up for others as well, sometimes it's challenging and sometimes we need strategic patience as well before we see some things taken into effect. Do you mind sharing more on how you build that, or what are some of the areas? Just now you mentioned as well one of the items that you're still hoping it to be passed as well. So how has the journey been and how did you develop strategic patience, or what are some of the other strategies you do, maybe finding the right decision makers and so forth? So curious to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Well, change can never happen overnight. You must have a lot of patience, persistence, and of course, but the most important thing, and also you must have a good narrative, to influence people that this is the kind of change that is necessary, it is good for them. And then you need to you can't do it yourself. You always need to find partners. You need to find people who are equally passionate, who says, I also believe in this, and take the torch and run, So, as you know, Alistair, even in the space or people with different abilities, it takes a very long time. At least now it's moving, and I'm really happy because, we now have the enabling master plan. I think there's a fifth one now, right? Yeah. So, but even then, you see step by step. So now, of course, we ask what are the gaps within the enabling master plan, or sometimes it's not the master plan, but it's the implementation. So it takes a certain process. Change will take time, but you must have the persistence, patience. You must have build your own networks in order to make sure that the change comes across. And of course, you have to make sure it goes into policies also.
Persistent patience, right? And building network. Do we have another question?
Hi, my name is Omi. I'm from RP. Sorry. Okay, so my question is, what advice would you give to youths who are still uncertain and scared of the future?
When I was a youth, I was also scared and uncertain of the future. We all go through the same throes, we're not sure. I remember when I finished my O-level, my A-levels, I don't know what to do, honestly. Should I go to work? Should I apply for a place in the university? I wasn't sure, completely no idea what I wanted to do. So my friends were taking their certificates and then they say, hey, come, let's go to apply a place in SU, Singapore U. Now it's NUS. I said, okay, let's go. You don't have a sense of direction yet. But along the way, you will find your feet, The only thing I have to say is this. People always say, follow your passion. I'm a bit reluctant to say that because sometimes your passion is not what you are good at doing. You may like art. You love doing art. That's okay, You love to play the guitar. That's okay. You love to play the band. That's okay. But you may not be good at that. Good enough for you to earn a livelihood. So you got to be careful as to what is the meaning of following the passion. Young people, I think so, yeah. They always say, I'm so bored, this job is repetitive. But every job is repetitive, routine. Even the president's job is repetitive. Yeah. You go to come, you have to you have to appoint, give letters of credentials to the ambassadors. There's so many of them. You do that all the time. It's repetitive. You got to meet the Minister for Finance to discuss the budget. Not the budget per se, because it's the Minister for Finance job. President doesn't do that, but President must make sure the budget does not draw down on the reserves. So you got to meet him every year. You meet him, you talk to him, and then so many other things. Heads of state come. You got to host them to banquets, to meetings, bipartite meetings, and so on. So it is also routine and regular. So all jobs are like that. But but you can inject some enthusiasm, interest in your job. Look at the job and say, well, it's not just a job. It's also a job where I can contribute something, I can add value. Which is very important because Imagine if you are a factory worker and every day you go and you operate the machine, it's the same thing for 8 hours, but you don't, instill in the factory worker. And yes, I'm gone to many factories because I used to take care of the electronic sector when I was in the NTUC, and I visited many factories. If you don't instill in the worker a sense that, look, you're not creating just one part, because the worker doesn't do all the parts of the project, one part. You're not just creating one part, but you're creating a product that can better the life of people, whether it is a product, a household item, or it is a product for some manufacturing of other parts of other big parts or whatever it is. But you got to instill in them the sense that, look, it's not just creating one small part, but that you are helping. If you're responsible for manufacturing that part of compressors. These compressors goes into fridges. And these fridges are important because it helps people make people's lives better. So you also got to find that perspective in your own jobs. But you don't have to. I wouldn't say you don't have to work on the future, but the only thing we need to be concerned about is that our economy continue to grow. And so long as the economy continues to grow and it continues to create jobs, you will have the jobs available. Your challenge will be to find a job that is compatible with your competence and your skills. And that is where the environment is changing, So there's some jobs they are now no longer relevant, I remember listening to BBC, and this chap was saying that because of AI, right? They interviewed 2 persons. Both were copywriters working in the industry, in the film industry. So they were copywriters, and they said their job. This lady was saying, she said that my boss came and he told me that I have become redundant because they have now going to use AI to do copywriting work. And then another man, he said he does contract copywriting work. He lost his job also. Then he said that, maybe I go and learn the skills. I become a technician or I become a plumber. He said, better still. Because plumbing is something you can't use AI, right? You still must go down and tinker. I'm not suggesting that. In case you get me wrong, then somebody put on social media, Madam Halimah. She's gone a little bit bonkers. No, I'm telling you how jobs, copywriters are now feeling threatened. They said that no, their jobs will be gone. So that is what you got to be sensitive about. There are a lot of career centers that gives advice on these things. To get but it's difficult to get 100% match. But you have to make sure that your skills and competence continue to be relevant. And this is where then you cannot say once I have got my degree, I'm okay. Or maybe I got a master's degree, I'm okay. No, it must be a process of continuous learning, lifelong learning. And if you have a problem getting lifelong learning courses, you can come to SUSS. Lots and lots of lifelong learning courses. Not because I'm chancellor, but I know a little bit more because I'm chancellor, There's a lot of courses there, lifelong learning. 60% of our students in SUSS are mature students. They're students, studying part-time because they're working. I think is something and makes me very happy to be able to serve there. Yeah.
Thank you. So it's important, right, for us to keep upgrading ourselves, upskilling, and always ensure that we have the right skills for the future jobs. Okay, can we have another question?
Hi, Madam Halimah. My name is Lynette. So I just have a question about, hearing you speak, I think we can all agree that you are very humble and you have come a long way to your journey. But I think nowadays there's been a lot of talk about, burning out and feeling that kind of mental pressure from your job. So maybe you could tell us something that you do that has kept you very grounded and also kept you going through all the years.
For a start, I have 5 children. People ask me, how did you raise 5 children? I say, I don't know. Those things, you just find your own balance. It wasn't easy. I tell you, it was really difficult. It was really challenging, And I was at another dialogue and somebody asked me, how do you ever get over that guilt feeling every time you step out of the house when your children were young? I said, I never got over it. I always felt guilty stepping out of the house with the children all, still very young. But, it is something that you have to find a balance. I was lucky because my mom was staying with me and then I got a help. But that means that I remember when the children were still young, I don't know what's going on the television. Telly was completely out. Don't ask me anything. I don't know any programs. Because by the time the children goes to bed, you're so exhausted, you fall asleep. You got no time, And then weekends, it's the same thing. Everything is focused on taking care of the kids, bringing them out, and so on and so forth. I feel that find a balance. You will feel burnout. But now, there's a lot of tools to help you. So you got to find that balance for yourself compared to the past. The past, when I first started work, it was still typewriter, typewriter. And then you have to you do a piece of work, you write, and then you go to the pool of typists, and then they type for you. If they make one mistake, and you got to read every line. And if they make one mistake, and if that is going to be like a legal document, they got to rewrite, they got to retype everything, So it is can you imagine how much more challenging it was? And then when the computer came, it was like a godsend to all of us. Because the typists also get angry. Because they belong to a pool and everybody is asking, mine is first. So, and there you are waiting, how come after a few days the piece of work is not typed yet? So when the computer came, it was a real godsend because we could do ourselves and then you could actually, correct it immediately and come out with a fine copy and that you can use. So that I think, there is no perfect answer. Look at it in this way. All of us go through that. I think my mom must have a lot more pressure than me, I believe. Having to take care of 5 children, feeding 5 children with no help, nothing. Then my life was better. I look at my children, I think their life is better than mine. So although they all complain of stress, all of them complain of stress. The job is stressful, not stressful. But the only thing is they always say, when I was still I was still working, they say that, but we don't think our job is as stressful as yours, So okay, there's a sense of relativity, Yeah, but you got in ways. I mean, that's a real thing. Stress, burnout, got to find your own ways of managing it. My own is sometimes in our haste to, I must talk a little bit about mental health, That in our haste to try and find a label for everything, I just worry that we over-label. Sometimes people feel burnout or stressed and we say, mental health, You got to be careful with that because the labelings of sometimes our state of emotions for a certain period because of work or because of relationship issues or whatever, and we start labeling everything as mental health issues, that would problems also. So from the health perspective, I'm a little bit concerned about that because there seems to be quite a proliferation of that, and even online providing of health, mental health service and so on. But you will find your own balance, that I'm sure. For me, what do I do? I most of the time I do a lot of reading, so that diverts my attention. And reading, I must say now, I listen to a lot of audiobooks. Have any of you listened to audio? Anybody? You? Okay, one person. Listen to audiobooks. It's very useful. It saves you a lot of time. So a book that's 100 pages, if you listen to audiobooks while you are exercising or while you are doing some housework or cleaning or whatever, it helps. Because you're doing 2 things at the same time. That is productivity, And also it takes your mind off the work that you are doing at the moment.
So we have to find balance and
I want to say one very important thing for stress and burnout, regular exercises. I always do that. Regular exercises helps me helps to build up the stamina. Even when I was president, I never give up on my exercises on my stationary bike. I would like to go out, but then it's a little bit problematic. So people running after you or whatever, not very conducive. So I have my stationary bike. That beats stress all the time. Even when I'm overseas for state visit, I request you please ask them to put a stationary bike in the room. And they oblige. That's very kind of them. So that helps because state visits are also very stressful. You meet so many people and then, so many events that you have to attend. Yeah, so it helps to start the morning just with a little bit of exercise. Try that. It may be good, yeah.
Okay, so exercising is important. Okay, we have one person here who wants to ask a question.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Madam Halimah. My name is Brent. I'm a student from ITE College East. So, in your time as president, I'm sure that you've mentioned that you met a lot of people. So, thinking of that, what is the one person that has struck you in time as president when meeting them, whether it's a head of state or a person who works closely with the community?
I meet so many people, and I tell you, from action. Leadership does not mean only political leadership, but leadership at all levels. It could be in the community organizations, it could be in student bodies, and so on. I met really very interesting people, and very good people, and people who are very committed and very, full of convictions. If it's a head of state, I meet many heads of states. But there are some who you can see that they go beyond just the briefs that are given to them to try and basically connect. One person I always feel a great deal of warmth is Jacinta Ardern. She was Prime Minister of New Zealand. And you can connect very easily with her because she has no airs. She talks according to what she feels, and it's very easy to connect with her. And so I don't want to say this, but I think the women leaders are quite good. Yeah. I went on a state visit to Germany. I met Angela Merkel. And she's exactly what you read about her. She's really no nonsense, She doesn't beat around the bush. She just tells you directly what she thinks. She says what she wants to say, But you have a lot of respect for her because she's built such a reputation. And this is one thing you have to bear in mind, reputation. Wherever you are, whatever work you do, whether it is community work, whether it is in your job, of course, if you're a political leader, reputation is critical. Once you build that reputation, you have a bank to depend on, this reputation of yours. And look at the late Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. I just want to give you an example. We didn't use social media at that time, right? Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. I can't imagine him appearing on TikTok or whatever. But and Mr. Lee Kuan Yew was never present all the time. But nobody in their right frame of mind will ever forget him because he's got such a huge reputation, and all whatever he stood for, his values, his principles, and all that. You don't have to see him every day on social media or Facebook or whatever, but the man exists. You know what he stood for. And that is the most important thing, the value of reputation. I tell you a story which I read in one of these books, very interesting story. And this is about China. China, before they unified into one entity, you were always fighting each other. So, there was a general who has gone to the village. He is very well known. The whole of the other states knew all about him and his brave, so on. But that particular day, he knew that there was another group that's coming, and from another state to attack this country, his state. So, men out and to do some work and also to find out where they are, because he was told that they are quite far away. But then as he was in just a very small force, then one of his soldier came to tell him that the military forces of the other state is marching towards the village. Now, he had only about 100 men, and those are thousands. He could see them, lines and lines of them. So what he did was, he did the most unusual thing. He said, open the gates of the village. Open it. The fortress, everything open. Then he went to sit at a very prominent place, so that the soldiers and their generals coming in can see him, and what he's doing. Then he started playing a flute or something like that. And so when the generals came and they saw him, they knew his reputation. His reputation was a fantastic reputation. I said, they knew his reputation. They said, why is he sitting there so calm, collected? He obviously must have a lot of soldiers in the village waiting to fight us. So the army of the other state decided to turn back because of his reputation alone. He didn't do anything except to sit there pretending calm. And so because his reputation precedes him, whatever you do, it's very important. You need to build a reputation at work, as a student, in a community organization, in the business that you run. Because they sometimes forget about the reputation part. But once the reputation is damaged, it's very difficult to recover. And people don't want to buy because, your reputation is gone. So remember that. That's a very important part, yeah. But I met many leaders, and they're very good ones. And all of them have the interest of countries at heart. But many of them, what I'm really glad is that they always say that we have good governance, we have very strong governance, and that is a feather in our cap. But we have to make sure we don't become complacent. That's important, yeah.
All right. Thank you for sharing about the importance of reputation. I think we may have time for one more question. Oh, a lot more questions. Okay. Three questions. So first, second, okay. So we'll go with.
All right. Good evening, Madam Halimah, and special of Madam Rahayu as well. Congratulations on your promotion. Anyway, for Madam Halimah, I've got perhaps two questions combined together. I think there's a lot of youth around here, and there's a lot of PMETs as well. Something more lighthearted for you. Weekend is coming. After you finish with your whole appointment as a president and leave the political scene, what was your first choice of food place that you went to that you didn't have the chance to go because of, like what you mentioned, you didn't have the flexibility of moving around flexibly? So what was one of the first few places that you actually checked out in Singapore right after your presidency in Singapore? And perhaps the next question is, right after you finish all your, tenureship and all that, what is your personal goal right now? What's next for you? Yeah.
Well, the first thing I did was I went with my kids to watch a movie. Not the name, but it was it was a Hong Kong movie. So, okay, I can't remember the name, but a good guy, bad guy, very fit. Tony Leung, yes, Tony Leung, and the other one was equally. They call him the Four Heavenly. Andy Lau, yes, indeed. I went to watch that. I went to eat popcorn. I drank Coke Zero. It was fantastic. So, yeah, well, you go back to being a normal person. But then even when I was president, I still never completely cut off because I still go every month. I go to the supermarket, buy things, so that I know what is the price of eggs. So you can ask me, I tell you. Now it's about 25 cents. People complain, of course, last time, a few years ago, it's only 15 cents, but not 25 cents. I mean, I can understand those sentiments because these are staple food and this is a source of protein. What's my goal? My goal is, I always find that question rather curious. I've already retired. So, of course, my goal is to have a good retirement. you know. Good retirement for me means spending more time with the family, spending more time with my grandchildren, and doing things I want to do. For instance, read things that I don't have time to read before. So now I can read very widely. I don't have to be confined to the briefs, which sometimes can be 40, 50 pages, And that's what people think that president doesn't have anything to do. President have a lot of work to do, One of the things I always do in whatever job I do, whether as a speaker, whether as when I was a trade unionist, as president, I read my briefs. And so I always not under prepare, I over prepare. Whatever I do, I over prepare, so that you begin to think of what are the possibilities that may come out, and then you prepare for those possibilities. And I tell you, this is important because I remember when I was in the trade unions, and then I was in the representing workers in the International Labour Organization. The final piece of work which I did was negotiation representing workers. It's a tripartite committee, right? The International Labour Organization in Geneva, they come up with standards, labour standards, and it's tripartite committee. You have government, employers, and unions. So I represented the workers. The workers wanted very badly to get a convention on decent work for domestic workers. For decades, they have tried and they have not succeeded. So finally, they managed to get it on the agenda. And then they asked me to be the spokesperson. I was reluctant because it's a lot of work. But they said, no, you please help, because it's a real fight. You got to fight, You got to go to committee, fight with the employers, fight with the government, and so on. And you have to over-prepare. And I have a bit of a reputation of over-preparing, so that those who represent the employers, usually employers are a little bit more difficult than the governments. Governments are very good, they're very friendly. And then the employers know that you have a spokesperson who you don't fiddle with, you see, because I come prepared with all the arguments, with all the facts, statistics. I think, so if what you do in your job, in your work, in your business or whatever, you need to over-prepare, so that you're not taken by surprise, taken for granted. You have thought about the issues 10 steps ahead, Sometimes it's not possible to think about everything, but at least you have done something to think about what could be the few steps ahead, Yeah. So always do that for yourself,
Okay. The next question.
Did I answer your question? Yeah. I wanted to see another movie. This one is my favorite Korean actor. He's not the typical Antila handsome type. He's a plumpy one. Yeah, Joe, is it Joe? Huh? Oh yeah, but there you are. But some of my daughter was not free, so we couldn't go. Yeah, but yeah, that person is my favorite actor. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Yu Ping. Here's my question. Recognizing that attention is the currency of leadership, could you elaborate on how you strategically allocated your time each day upon entering the political arena? Thank you.
Well, in politics is a very interesting, has got the interesting dynamics. Presenteeism is important, but too much of it is also a challenge. So you got to have a proper balance, because if you are seen all the time, people be wondering, whether you got enough time to do your work or not. So then, for all the political, even for myself when I was president, we do have a communications department. They help us in the communication work. So if there's any event, and then that event is, after the event is over, you have the comms department that prepares the comms for that event. Of course, you have the usual coverage by the newspapers, the Straits Times or Berita Harian or whatever. Then, of course, in my case, my comms people usually use social media or they use Instagram, either social media or Instagram or both. So that is how it is done after an event. We don't post everything because otherwise there will be just too many. But we post, when I was president, they post things which are a lot more, they think that is important, and so they post. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll have the last question.
Hi, I'm Crystal. Could you describe the challenges you faced as the first female president in Singapore? And if possible, are there any specific examples of the obstacles you faced?
Being the first president of Singapore, being the first speaker, it's actually a very daunting task, You feel as if it's untested ground for women, and then you're untested territory. And therefore, you then begin to ascribe a lot of responsibilities to yourself. You want to make sure that you succeed, right? If you don't succeed, then people say, you see, like a female president, so no use, Female speaker, also no use, huh? So it's non-event. So I must say, being the first female speaker, being the first female president, at this tremendous stress and a great sense of responsibility, which I took very, very, very seriously. Were there difficulties? I feel that whether you're male or female, you got to do the same things. You got to make sure that you do your work, you understand fully what are your responsibilities, and you discharge them. But I think women somehow, generally leadership, this general leadership, not just as a female president or females, but I think women do bring certain perspectives which are quite different from male leaders, and that I think is important. And that's why you must make sure that there are women leaders in all the different parts of leadership, whether it is business, whether it is community organizations. One of the things I did when I was in MSF, was Minister of State for MSF. I initiated the board agenda, and that was basically because for the longest thing about women, not enough women being represented on public listed companies, and therefore I initiated that board agenda where we have. And when we started at that time, that was about 10 years ago perhaps, we have only single digit of women being represented on public listed boards. But now we have about 27%. So we make incremental changes, improvements, and that's important. Yeah. But I always feel that sometimes women shoot their own foot, Firstly, we always think that we have a certain feeling that we are lesser than the men. There's a lot of studies that show, and this is not Madam Halimah speaking. I'm citing studies in case all the men here get very angry. I'm just starting the studies that I have read. Men sometimes when they are asked to take on a job, a promotional job or whatever, even if they may not have all the right qualifications, experience, competence, they say, yeah, no problem, I'll do it, I'll take it. But the women, they may have the experience, the qualifications, competence, they say, not sure. Maybe I'll go and think about it, but then maybe I can do this job or not, So that's what I mean. Sometimes women themselves may have that sense of inadequacy, and that's something which you have to overcome. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, whether you're a male or female, what is important is your skills, qualifications, experience, competence, your hard work and discipline. And that is all that matters. Yeah. There will always be that element. You cannot completely rule that out. Well, when you talk about gender balance, it's not 100% that we have reached there. We have not reached there. We are still work in progress. We can quote all the statistics and so on, but we are still work in progress, especially at the leadership level. And I'm talking about leadership level, I'm not just talking about politics, I'm talking about, whether you look at community organizations, you look at companies and so on. So we are still not there yet. There's still that gap. There's still that big gap as well. Men and women doing the same kind of work. But then you look at other countries in the world, have they reached that stage of complete perfection? The answer is also no. They also still a lot of work in progress. Yeah. And a lot of things that have happened in Singapore which have helped women, and one of it is childcare, very critical. When I was in MSF, that was in 2011, and there's a lot of concerns about lack of childcare facilities. Government has ramped that up a great deal, and also government has improved the quality. That helps women tremendously, because this is not even in many countries that you have accessible childcare, you have affordable, you have quality childcare. So that has helped. But certainly there's a lot more that can be done. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Madam Halimah, for your candid and personal sharing on a variety of topics today. I'm sure your experiences provide valuable lessons for all of us. Let's give another round of applause to Madam Halimah for her openness in sharing her journey.